I'm Janet Forrest, and this is Behind the Shelves. This is going to sound silly and cliche and trite, but there's something special about the Nantucket Atheneum. Something beyond the books and the services and the technology, beyond the historic building it exists in and the friendly people that work there. Maybe it's all these things combined or something more nebulous. I'm not sure what it is, but I just know there's something special about the Atheneum. I wondered what my colleagues thought this something was, so I asked them. One of the more popular responses was the building, which awes and inspires some people and confuses and intimidates others.
The first question people who go by is, what is this building? And sometimes they're in there and they're going, what is this building?
It's just such a beautiful building. You think, how could that really just be open to the public? It must be a museum. Where's the door where I, can buy a ticket?
With the kids, we get that a lot. I thought that was a bank. That place that looks like the White House, that's a library?
I think every year we hear from people that say, I came to the island and I kept passing your building and I thought it was a courthouse or I thought it was a church. They might come from their public library that, is very utilitarian. It might have the same architectural parts as like their school or their courthouse or something like that. When you come to Nantucket, your library is this beautiful column fronted building that is, all white, that looks like a temple. I think it's very striking to people.
I've run into people out on the street and someone was pointing to the post office and was asking if that was a library. So to them, that looked something more like a library than our large, white, beautiful building.
Once you've gotten over your awe of the shiny white exterior, the inside has a lot going on as well. Let's start on the first floor near the main entrance. It should look relatively familiar to library goers. Books on shelves, a checkout desk with flyers for services and upcoming events. Pretty standard library aesthetic. Off to your right, there's 3 large wooden tables where people can set up their laptops or settle in with a magazine or a newspaper. If you wander over to the new book section, you can get comfy in one of the leather armchairs. Oh, and don't forget to browse the book displays that the library staff sets up on the front table by the entrance. It changes regularly. If you make your way back to the nonfiction section, turn right, and coast past the fiction and mystery shelves, you'll feel like you've gone through the looking glass. But don't worry, you've just ended up in the Wheezy Library for Children, which was not part of the original building footprint. It was added in 1996. This is Jessie Dearborn, a children's library associate.
Sometimes we call it the tree house because there's a beautiful magnolia tree. There's lots of windows and we're like right at eye level with this magnolia tree. And we get to look out on the garden.
Unlike adult circulation, where all the books are lined up on shelves, the materials in Wheezy are set up to be more user-friendly to kids. Why don't we have Katie DeHart, who works in children's, show us around?
There are bins with all the picture books in alphabetical order. So smaller kids can rifle through the books. And that's super nice. We have one, like a book box with board books for the really little kids. So they can go over there and just pull them out and sit on the floor and look at them. And then the desk is there with the welcoming librarians. There's a Nantucket book section with books about Nantucket. There's a whole new book section with books that have just come in. There's, picture books and fiction and nonfiction and graphic novels. And then there's regular bookshelves with those kind of books in it, the series and the graphic novels and the easy reads. It's just very easy to find things.
Thanks, Katie. Now let's head back to the front entrance where we started. It's time to climb up the spiral staircase to the second floor. We are a fully accessible building, so you can of course also take the elevator. As you reach the top of the steps, or when the elevator doors slide open, the Great Hall reveals itself. Lincoln Thurber, head of the reference department, says he enjoys watching people enter the Great Hall for the first time.
You can kind of like see their eyes like kind of widen. If they're downstairs, they see these nice lofty 14-foot ceilings. But when they come up to the Great Hall, they see this 40 feet above them is the vaulted ceiling of the Great Hall. They see the stage at the other end, and they see all the artwork. We have a number of beautiful art pieces, both paintings and sculpture. I think it's a beautiful structure. It's a beautiful place to work. I think it's a beautiful place to study. You can be doing your everyday tasks, answering your emails and all that type of thing, but you're doing it within this structure and within this room that's very lofty, and maybe makes you feel very important for being there.
The library's history is preserved and honored throughout the building, but especially in the Great Hall. Artwork and sculptures in the likeness of great minds and orators adorn the walls and bookshelves. If you're interested in more information on the artwork in the Great Hall, there are laminated guides on the table by the door to the stairs. You can also ask Jim or Lincoln. They'd be happy to answer any questions you have. For now, let's keep going. We'll make our way all the way down past the first floor to the lower level. Once again, you can also take the elevator, but I like to get my steps in. If the Great Hall is an homage to the Atheneum's history, the lower level is representative of the Atheneum's future. There is a state-of-the-art conference room that we call the Learning Lab, the Molly Anderson Learning Lab to be exact. It's dedicated to our previous head librarian. The space can accommodate 20 to 30 people and offers teleconferencing and audio-video capabilities for classes, workshops, and presentations. Around the corner and down the hall, there is another space known as the Gallery that is used for craft classes, children's programs, and other events. Back by the elevator and the stairs, there's a small tutor room that can be reserved at the main circulation desk by individuals that need a private, quiet place to work. A couple other less glamorous but practical features of the lower level are 2 unisex bathrooms available to the public and a water fountain to refill your water bottle. A nice benefit if you're strolling around town and need a pit stop. There are a few other office spaces and storage areas for employees only, but that about covers your free audio tour of the library. Jim Borzilleri, a reference librarian associate, observed that the Atheneum has managed to retrofit and adapt this nearly 200-year-old building to fit a plethora of needs.
When you think about it, each floor is different and each area is different. I mean, we've got certainly, when you think of the stereotype of the library, the Great Hall kind of falls into that category. It's got statues and paintings and all these really old books. And that's sort of the vibe we've got. Of course, then we've got the laptops there. We've got the young adult section there. We've got our 3D printer, which is on Lincoln's desk. So there are a few things that kind of contradict from it. But overall, that's kind of the image it has. Contrast that with what's happening in, let's see, the Wheezy, the children's library, which is much smaller, much more low height, much more kid friendly. It's got the carpets. It's assumed kids are going to be running around and making noise and doing all kinds of things. So they've got that vibe. And then you get down to the basement and we've got our media room where we've got a teleconferencing center. We've got, the other spaces where there may be events going on. So those are a little bit less of what we think about the old style library.
For people who work in the Atheneum or visit regularly, you might think the building's novelty would wear off, but not for library associate Jillian Lewis.
I think the building is really, really special. I feel so lucky to go into that building every day. I really do. I never for a moment take that for granted, that building, because to me, it's a huge part of the library, is that we're so lucky to have a library in a building like this. Not everybody's that lucky.
As an adult programs coordinator, I'm always wandering from floor to floor and throughout the building, so I have my favorite spots. And I was wondering if my colleagues have their favorite spots too.
Oh, I love all my children. The one that probably, I just love being in, like a kid in a candy store, is probably in the quote vault, which is, our climate controlled locked area where we keep, some of the really good stuff.
I like looking through the art books in the main library. I think that's my favorite place to peruse. It's calm and quiet, and there's room to browse and think about like what interests me, and you never know what you're gonna find.
I like it over by Nydia, the statue there. It's always nice light. She's beautiful. And every time I go over there, that's where all the tarot books are and the angel books and stuff like that. It always needs to be fussed with a little bit. I think a lot of people like to be over there.
Who is Nydia? I don't know. I of course know the statue. I just don't know who Nydia is. Do you know?
It's from a poem, and she's blind, and she's leading the people away from the volcanic explosion. So she's listening. She's a helper too.
When I sit behind the desk, there's that window directly in front of me, and it captures Wheezy jetting out, and it has the American flag there blowing and some of the trees there. And so that's, I call it my traveling window.
The curved staircase. I don't know anyone who could walk up that and not just feel like this is pretty amazing, And I also love that window that's halfway between the first and the second floor. So when I'm turning off the lights, I can see what the weather's like. So yeah, about halfway up the staircase, the light comes in through those old windows and makes wavy patterns on the walls. There's not many staircases like that built anymore.
I like the stairway up to the Great Hall. I like it's got little cubbies all along the way. There's like these little doors that I wonder what that door goes to. And I love the staircase. It's pretty special.
I mean, the Great Hall is really hard to beat. Spending a lot of time up there, it really makes me kind of pinch myself when I think about the history and the artwork. And yeah, so the Great Hall in general, I think, is my favorite spot, just because every time you walk up the stairwell, you kind of take it all in. And I love thinking about all the people that have passed through that room over the years.
Because we're in this historic structure, it does have some features that were needed and very useful during its first incarnation. One of the features is that the library used to be lit by gaslight. So they would light lamps. And there's actually, as you walk down the steps to go into the basement from the main floor, there's actually this like little cubbyhole door that occurs on those winding steps. And it's really just meant to be there so that they could have access to the pipes within the building to turn it on and off the gas light. I always find that kind of fascinating that structure is still there. When you look at pictures of the reconstruction of the building, you see that everything was like sort of opened up. And I can well imagine the engineers on the project pulling open the walls and finding gas lines and all these things and wondering what they should do to pull them out safely.
As you've heard over and over again, it's hard to separate the building from its history. The two are intertwined, which explains why the staff said another aspect that makes the Atheneum so special is its rich past. Here's Katie again.
That Mariah Mitchell was the librarian there, and that Frederick Douglass spoke there, and that's kind of really big and cool stuff. The Great Hall is just, you can tell that their souls have been there. There's a feeling about the library, and I think for me, a lot of it has to do with its history, which I am not even that learned about, but I know I can feel it.
The Nantucket Atheneum began as a private library at 1 India Street in 1834. The building you see today was constructed and completed in 1847, 1 year after the Great Fire destroyed the original building, as well as a large portion of downtown. Staying connected with the Atheneum's history while keeping the building and the institution useful and relevant can be a difficult needle to thread. Laura Pless Freedman, in Adult Circulation, says one place the library does this really well is through a set of books, publications, and materials known as the Nantucket Collection.
So we try to have at least 2 copies of every book that was published on Nantucket, future and past. It's just, if you took one book out every 2 weeks from the Nantucket collection, you just would be a Nantucket scholar. It's wonderful over there. Lincoln does an amazing job, and Pam, of getting every book that's written about Nantucket. There's some very scholarly books over there, but then there's also some super fun ones like Nantucket window boxes. I just think in 25 years, tastes are going to change, and it just will be fun to see what kind of flowers people were using. Just any little angle that someone is captivated by Nantucket and they decide they're going to write a book, it ends up in the Nantucket collection.
So I guess you could say another thing that makes the Atheneum special is its ability to simultaneously hold on to its past and adapt with the times. A major shift in the Atheneum's timeline was in 1900 when it converted from a private members-only organization to a public library. As its users and patrons have changed over the decades, the collections of materials have needed to expand and adapt as well. Library patrons today might take for granted the ability to request pretty much any book they want online that can be picked up a few days later at the library. According to Jim, not too long ago, the pickings were pretty slim.
Way back then in the 70s, yeah, it's like it's on the shelf and that's it. I think Mitchell's bookstore probably had more books than the Atheneum did at that point, which is not to criticize, but just to say in terms of scale, think of Mitchell's books and now imagine that's it. Excellent collection, but if they don't have that one book you want, ordering it is going to take a while. I think back then they would write to somebody or call them, and if they had the book, they might send you back a letter saying, we are going to send it to you, and then a few weeks later, you might get the book. All right, I'm not a kid, but I'm not that old, and it's within my lifetime, just how much of a change we've gone through here.
Perhaps you're old enough to remember the tiny drawers of card catalogs. Leslie Malcom, who's now the head of Children's, was part of the team that administered the transition from card catalogs to the barcode system.
My very, very first memory of being involved with the Atheneum was Ellie Coffin and I came in the late 90s when the library went online, when it joined the Clams network. And we came as a barcoding team to barcode the books. There were several pairs. You worked in teams and you had to go through the shelves and take each book off the shelf, match it with its card from the card catalog, and put a barcode on that card, plus put a barcode in the book. Then the book could go back on the shelf. And then those cards went down, I guess, to the workroom and all got input into the computer. But I was pregnant with Gwen then, so I was huge. And we would sit by the windows in fiction because, of course, the building wasn't air conditioned yet or climate controlled at all. And it was just such a wonderful way to spend the summer when when you're 9 months pregnant, basically, sitting by the windows in fiction, barcoding the books with Ellie. It was just a lot of fun.
I'm happy to report, in addition to upgrading from card catalogs to the barcode system, the Atheneum has also installed climate control. Yet another cherished aspect of the Atheneum is the breadth of patrons we serve. People have a special connection with Nantucket, even if they only spend a summer or a weekend or even just an afternoon here. The Atheneum has loosened its policies and procedures and made it possible to stay connected from anywhere. Pamela McGrady, who works in adult circulation, remembers when not just anyone could step off the boat and get a library card. The screening process was much more rigorous.
We used to have to ask people if they were propertied here on the island and or Massachusetts landowners. We don't have to do that either, which is great. You don't have to ask so many questions and proof of anything, just photo ID that says you are who you say you are and fill out the piece of paper and you are good to go. Just in the time that I've been here, we've seen a lot of changes.
Jillian loves that the Atheneum keeps people connected to the island.
What I love now, too, is that you don't have to be here to use your library card. You can be somewhere else. You can be someone who visited for a day or someone who comes here every summer and Nantucket's your special spot. But you can still use your library card all over the world. I just love that.
For our patrons that live on the island year-round, but have mobility challenges that prevent them from visiting the library in person, they can still receive services through our Homebound program, overseen by Jillian.
Eileen McGrath used to do the Homebound, and then she retired, and it was handed down to me. I take it very seriously because my mom, when she was sick, she said a book always helped her get through. So I really try to get the book that's right for that patron and not just give them just something. I really try to make sure it's something that they're really going to like and enjoy. I've learned a lot about a lot of different genres that I wouldn't normally know about, and it's interesting. It's all interesting. And I really enjoy, some people just order their books and we send it to them. But a lot of the patrons, I talk to them every week and see what they want. And I get to know them and I get to know what they like. And so when I see something, I think, oh, they're really going to like this.
A program that often overlaps with the homebound service is the VITAL program, which stands for Vision Impaired Technology Assistance at the Library. It is run by public libraries in partnership with the Perkins School for the Blind, which provides special audio players free of charge to anyone with vision impairment.
I help them get their own players through Perkins. I help fill out the form and get them set up so they get their own player. We have players people can borrow to see if it's something that they would like and if it works for them. I do that for a lot of the homebounds, and I do it for some people that, aren't homebound that use the players. The people who use it love it. It means so much to them because they can't read anymore, and it's really sad. And some people, it was really hard to make the transition from a book to reading to listening. But once they do, they really enjoy it.
Just like with the homebound program, Jillian takes the extra step to make sure patrons get specific books that they will enjoy.
I'm really willing to find books that they'll like for them and download the books for them. I think that's a little unusual. I figure, I get books you don't want to listen to,
While all these programs are offered free to the public, they of course cost money. And even in its fundraising efforts, the Atheneum takes a special approach, which includes the community. The Nantucket Atheneum Dance Festival, which was created during Molly Anderson's tenure as executive director, has served as the library's largest fundraiser for many years. In addition to several private events for donors, there are also affordably priced events that offer world-class dance performances to anyone on the island. And for those who can't pay, there are volunteer opportunities. The festival helps meet our financial goals, which keeps the lights on and the library running, and it meets our community service goal of bringing arts and culture to our island. Here's Jillian again.
I remember someone when we first did the dance festival, they wanted a ticket, but they really couldn't afford a ticket. And I was like, I took their name and number to see if they could volunteer. And then one of our other patrons came in and he said, I purchased these tickets and I can't use them. Do you know, he was giving them for someone else to use. And so I called up the person right away and I said, oh, I have tickets.
During the pandemic, our development team and board of directors reimagined the festival as a virtual event, and then reimagined the festival again this year as an outdoor performance that was free to the public. For our current executive director, Ann Scott, who was brought on board in the fall of 2019, this summer was the first time she experienced the dance festival in person.
I was not prepared, I think, for the level of artistry that festival contains. You would have to be somewhere like Paris or New York, to see that level of dance. And this year, especially at Children's Beach, what happened in that pavilion is like world class. It blew me away. I was just completely in awe of what I was seeing. I knew it would be good, but I just didn't realize how good.
Jim says this approach to development and fundraising creates added value and buy-in.
We're not part of the town government. We're sort of a private service that's sort of off, not really on the side, but we're sort of meeting a need here. And I think that goodwill is extended as well. And I think because they know that, they can feel that, they can be supportive in a lot of different ways, including, in some ways financially. So that I think adds to the goodwill as well.
This month, hundreds of people, both on Nantucket and beyond, will be doing the Atheneum's 20th annual Cold Turkey Plunge that benefits the Wheezy Library for Children. Like the dance festival, it has been adapted as a virtual event this year and last, but in previous years, hundreds of people would gather at Children's Beach on Thanksgiving morning and pay a small registration fee for the privilege of running into the icy Nantucket Harbor. Prizes were given for best costume, most money raised by a team, most money raised by an individual, and longest plunger. Once again, beyond its goal of bringing in money, it brings the town together for an event open to anyone who wants to participate. Here's Jim again.
We see something like the Turkey Plunge, which is a lot of fun for everybody. And I think that helps build up the goodwill as well. And I think about where things were, as I said, 25, 30 years ago. We're certainly not working through that model. We're keying off that model. And I don't really want to criticize the people that were involved back then. They had to work with what they had to work with. But I think, one of the things we recognize is there is a Google, there is an Amazon, There are, there is a Netflix. So where do we fit into this universe? Who can we help in this universe? What services can we supply for the people that want stuff that maybe just doesn't have a commercial value, so it's a little harder to find, but also people that, really just can't afford to make use of the service, or people that just really like our lectures and our book series. They could afford, they could buy Amazon, but they still want to come to our lectures because we do something interesting. That's sort of our other value. And I think that's kind of where we build up the goodwill.
Yet another unusual characteristic of the Atheneum is that, unlike most public libraries, we are a private 501c3 nonprofit. Lincoln says that being independent frees the Atheneum up to be nimble and flexible with how it allocates its money.
The library, in the 20 years that I've been here, has, dedicated itself over and over again, seeing what was needed. We needed help with fundraising, so we created the space, we hired the people. When we needed more programming help, we, hired staff, allocated desk space, again, in finite space. So I think the Atheneum is very special in that when it sees that there's a need, it will do what is necessary to fulfill that goal. We're lucky in that we're a private institution and that we don't have to deal with the bureaucracy in some cases of how hard that might be for a public library that's town run or something like that. We can say, we're just going to allocate space for this worker to be able to do the best job they possibly can to fulfill this goal.
Daniel Griffin, who works in both adult circulation and development, says being a private institution impacts the relationship between the Atheneum and the patrons.
I do feel that there's a general sense among our patrons of investment/ownership. And yeah, that is a natural state due to, they donate to the Atheneum, therefore they have investment in the institution. But I feel like their voices are heard, or they feel like their voices are heard, or at least are not taken for granted and are valued. I believe that is a benefit of us having that tax status as a 501c3 and something to remember and always try to steward with our patrons.
While the Atheneum receives some government funding, it needs to raise 75% of its budget every year.
We have a development team that it's incredible. I mean, it's amazing what's in place. It's an amazing amount of work that goes into cultivating those friendships in the community and keeping them and finding new ways to excite people about the Atheneum and about supporting us.
At previous libraries where Anne worked, all funding was allocated by the town based on different factors. There was a certain amount of guaranteed funding. Having to raise 3/4 of your budget year after year is something that could create a lot of pressure. But Anne says she feels quite the opposite.
We have such a strong endowment. We have such smart board members who just have so much knowledge of finance and know how to grow our endowment that in some ways, even though we have to raise 75% of our funding, I feel more secure in this environment than I did in either of those other libraries, which seems crazy, right? Because you're really operating on the goodwill and the generosity of the individuals. They're individuals supporting us.
As a fairly new staff member, Daniel was taken aback by the significant role the Atheneum plays in the community it serves.
I was a little bit surprised at how much of a community impact role that a library can play. And, it's not reciprocal, but cyclical. The more engaged a community is with its library, the more the library is going to be able to give to the community. I've been really impressed with its role that it plays. And not only that, how the patrons, constituents, however you want to call them, the community members within Nantucket actually engage the library.
To say our patrons are engaged, I think would be an understatement. Many of our regular library users have no problem letting us know what they think of our services and what we should be doing differently. Laura appreciates the feedback.
When people kind of get feisty like that, I just smile and think, oh, aren't we lucky, to be so demanding for our services.
While patrons hold the Atheneum to a high standard, it's because they're committed to the organization. Elizabeth Kelly, head of adult circulation, says it's an important part of their life and routine.
I can't tell you how many people have told us that it's the best part of their day, or it makes their week when they find books. And it's such a part of their routine. And I think that's really the best part, is knowing that it's not just a place that they go to and get things. It's just about the experience and getting to talk to us. And it's very much a part of their social interactions for the day. And I think that's important to us too, because, customer service is our number one priority, but also just getting to know the people that we're providing services for. And it's always surprising to me to hear really how important it is to the people that come in. And when they express that to us, it's really heartwarming.
Here's Laura again.
Somebody told me with all seriousness that the library was the number one reason he retired here. And it was, it was spoken from the heart. It really was like, well, I'm retiring and I just want to be able to go to the library a couple times a week. And I thought, wow, that's powerful.
The important role patrons play in the day-to-day operation of the library was never clearer than when the connection was interrupted during the pandemic. Our staff were alone in the building for more than a year, and it was a strange experience.
The building was like nobody had walked in certain areas of the library in a while. So when you would walk over there, you'd hear a lot of extra creaking. I thought about that a few times. I'm like, wow, the building really kind of was still for almost a year and a half. Who would be walking over near the newspapers? We hadn't had them in so long. So when I did finally go over there to put the newspapers out of the magazines, I could hear the floorboards creaking. If I was upstairs, and I had to walk over and get a book, I could really hear some of the floorboards creaking, which I normally wouldn't if there were a bunch of people in the building. I don't know. I just found it kind of amusing that, we kind of had to wake the building up as well, kind of get back to the old new normal, if that makes sense.
Well, it was a lot because of the cleaning procedure and wrapping the books for privacy, and it was a lot. And we were very, very busy, which was terrific. It was really great to see that people, utilize the services the way that they did.
All the different adjustments were hard, each step, but I did find that I liked it because I have issues with hearing. So it was nice and quiet in the library, and it was me and Jesse, and we could talk and do what we had to do. And, and the other staff around the building, I could hear them very easily. But mostly I felt super proud because I really felt like we were doing such a good thing for the community.
No one knew how the virus was spread. So is it a hung up book? Is it, what's going to clean that book? When you're not sure, it makes it harder, to go forward. Wrapping the books, just getting that routine down. I did the homebound every week. I still did that every week. So I did that all through the pandemic on a smaller scale, but I used to suit up because I didn't know, right?
What did it feel like in the building, being in the building without people coming and going?
Well, people were in the foyer, they came in, so you had that interaction. It felt odd to not have the people in. It was really nice to have the customer, but you still talk to the customers because you had to call them or the patrons. You had to call them and you talk to them outside. I'd say the library felt like it was languishing. It was, just in a hold space. It was in a pause.
But last May, it was time to press play. As difficult and sometimes stressful as it was being closed to the public and changing their routines, our staff was also nervous about what would happen when the patrons came back in.
I have to say we're all stressed about COVID protocols, and we didn't have anybody in the building in a year, and everywhere else has already learned how to deal with the masks and whatever comes with COVID, really. And we opened the doors and people were very nice and understanding, and it was just great to see that they understood our precautions and really had no trouble following our rules that we feel make everyone safe.
Well, it was a little nerve-wracking. We were hoping everybody was going to be safe, everybody was going to be okay, was still wearing their masks.
But once everyone got over their first day jitters,
oh, so great. so great. It was nice to see that people had come back to the island. It was interesting to see that some folks had hunkered down. You just hadn't seen them shopping or anything. It's been really nice. It's been nice to catch up, to see. It may sound silly, but people's dogs even, oh, yay, your dog made it too, It's been really, really nice.
Jillian has noticed that while people are back in the building, not everything is the same as it was.
Pandemic really changed things. Like, people don't take out DVDs anymore. A lot of people don't even have DVD players. People just got out of the habit of getting their material. Now they just do ebooks. They got into that habit. It changed people's habits a little bit. And also too, the programming, people haven't come in for the programming yet. So they just started up on Thursday nights. I used to work at night a lot, and the LVA students, just seeing that energy come in and going, the library needs the people.
Something neither the staff nor the patrons expected was how emotionally overwhelming it would be to open the doors again.
Obviously, we're trying to get ready, and we were working up to something that we were trying to think about all of the different ways it could maybe go wrong. But just having the few patrons come through the door that we have recently, it's been really nice to have that familiarity come back and also just see people's faces. I won't get too specific, but we've had a lot of people be very excited and some people be very emotional. Patrons coming in just being overwhelmed by the notion of being able to come to come back through a door that they've missed so much. And it was both unexpected for them and unexpected for us too. And I think a lot of people are just really eager to see us again. We talk to them on the phone a lot. It's just not the same. So I was surprised by that. I think we were all a little bit nervous about it, and I think patrons are too. But now that it's happening, I think there's something very comforting about it. And I think we're looking forward to it more and more as things hopefully get safer.
We did that soft opening a few weeks ago, and one of our patrons just happened to be coming up and picking up her book and was just couldn't, tears were in her eyes. Like, the library was open. It's really, truly one of the things that she missed so much. She kind of laughed at herself. She's like, I can't believe I'm crying, but she was. So we just have a lot of people who care about the community, and they care about their library for sure.
An encounter that Anne had with a patron shortly after the library reopened reminded her of just how important the Atheneum is to the people it serves.
That first week or maybe a week and a half, I just stood outside for, I think, 4 hours, working outside, but also as people came up, just letting them know they could go inside. And there was a gentleman who came up, and he was just getting his books from the vestibule and checking out the basket with items that you could take for free. And I nodded at him and smiled, and he did not respond really. He just kind of, I won't say scowled, but he didn't look happy, and he didn't look interested in engaging with me in any way. And as he turned to go back down the steps with his materials, I just said, I don't want to bother you, but I just want you to know that whenever you're ready, you can actually go inside the Atheneum. And he stopped, and he looked at me, and his lower lip started to tremble, and his eyes filled up with tears. And he said, I can go inside? So it's like, oh yeah, you can go inside. And he had tears streaming down his face. And he went in, and everybody at the desk knew him. Of course, I'm still like a newbie because we closed for a year. And you could hear everybody welcoming him back inside. And it was so moving. I know how much public libraries mean to the community, and I know how much people love the Atheneum, but that was just such a visceral moment, and it was so moving. And it really hit home how much people really depend on the library, not just for what they're picking up, but just for that human exchange, just to be able to walk in where you're familiar and people know your name and they're glad to see you. It's just lifeblood for so many people.
So is it the history, or the vast collections, or the variety of services, or the people that work there, or the people that visit? I'm still not quite sure what specifically makes the library special. I guess it's different for everyone. What do you think? Come pay us a visit and tell us what you think makes the Atheneum so special. Behind the Shelves is a production of the Nantucket Atheneum. It was written, edited, and narrated by me, Janet Forrest. Special thanks to my colleagues featured in this episode: Jim Borzilleri, Laura Pless Freedman, Leslie Malcom, Lincoln Thurber, Elizabeth Kelly, Jesse Dearborn, Katie DeHart, Jillian Lewis, Pamela McGrady, Daniel Griffin, and Ann Scott. The Nantucket Atheneum is located at 1 India Street in Nantucket, Massachusetts. We'd love for you to come by and say hello. You can visit our website at nantucketatheneum.org. Join me again next week when we take another look behind the shelves.